Hello, friends. We are now live and welcome to my secondary channel where I paint and we talk about art. So let me see if I can stop this sharing right now. Okay, so today we are talking about the Korean show, uh, Her Private Life, which is ostensibly not a show about art but about what it is to be a fan. So our heroine, Dong-mi, um, Sung Duk-mi, is a curator at an art museum, a private museum, and that's what she does for a living. That's what she does by day. But at night and on weekends and whenever she gets the chance, she is a fan. And what does a fan mean? Well, fan is short for fanatic, and the word has been sort of borrowed, like many other words, into Korean. The way they pronounce it is sort of pun. So if somebody is a fan of someone or something, is a pun. Okay. Um, I'm interested in fandom because I am a fan. I have been a fan. I will probably always be a fan. And before we actually start talking about the art and I share the art with you, I want to talk to you about what it is to be a fan and what this has to do with art. And while the Korean show, Her Private Life, is actually a romantic comedy and not that serious, it does address some of these issues. And so I thought we could talk about that. And if anybody is watching and you would like to, um, if you would like to comment, you can do so in chat. It is available right here. Um, Julia was not able to join us today, so it's just going to be me. But if you'd like to talk about the show, if you've seen the show, if you're a fanatic of Korean shows, which I have become, I was not before, then please do share your own views on all of this. So originally, I was a Star Trek fan. You can see a picture of Mr. Spock back there. And the fans in Her Private Life are not that kind of fan. They're more like groupies. There is a K-pop star called Xi'an that they are following, and their adulation for this young man is of a very personal nature, but at the same time, there is this fan's vow that they aren't actually trying to have a private life or a relationship with Xi'an. They want to worship him from afar. Now, when I was a fan of Star Trek, I wasn't actually a fan of any of the actors. I mean, I appreciated the fact that you couldn't have a Star Trek without actors. You also couldn't have Star Trek without writers, and I was well aware of that. And since I was in the writing niche myself, that's really what I wanted to do. I people like Gene Roddenberry or DC Fontana, I was interested in them, but my adulation was not for Leonard Nimoy or William Shatner. It was not for um, DC Fontana or any of the other writers. It was for the characters. And so, in a way, that was a very abstract kind of fandom. I did write to Gene Roddenberry. I told him that my father was a physicist, and he said that you couldn't travel faster than light. And Gene Roddenberry wrote me a letter back explaining warp drive, and he also sent me this flight deck certificate signed by himself, Gene Roddenberry, but also signed by supposedly Captain James Kirk. And that signature was actually made by his secretary, Susan Sackett, as far as I know. Okay, so the fandom as depicted in her private life is different. Dong-mi tries to remain anonymous as a fan. She wears a face mask, not to protect herself from germs, but to hide her face, which is really what face masks do. They hide your face. They make it hard to breathe. They don't protect you from anything else. But she wears a face mask. She wears a cap over her head. She dresses all in black, and she has a camera with a giant telephoto lens. And so what she does is she goes out to these events where Xi'an, her idol, appears, and she stands at a great distance from him. She's not trying to touch him or anything. And she takes pictures of him, and then she writes a blog, or she runs a fan site, which is called The Road to Xi'an. But Xi'an himself is a fan, or so we think, of a certain artist. And that artist is called Lee Sol, which is an unusual name apparently for a Korean or any kind of person. We know she's a woman, and she paints. But her paintings, while they are well known, we know there are nine of these paintings, but they're hard to find. And Xi'an has let the world know that he is a collector of paintings by Lee Sol, and he wants to buy a certain painting. And could his fans help him with that? Well, our heroine, Dong-mi, goes to an art auction. I think it's in China or Hong Kong, or I don't remember where it was exactly, but it wasn't actually in Korea. And she bids on one of the paintings. Now, I want to show you the paintings, but I'm not very good at screen share. So we'll see what happens when I try to do that. So please bear with me as I try to figure out how to share those with you. So we're going to share the screen, and then I will have to go away and come back. And okay, that's one of the paintings, but that's not the one I wanted to start out with. Okay, I wanted to start out with this one. I don't know if we can make it any bigger. Okay, I'm gonna look and see if I managed to do that by looking at our. So what you notice about these paintings by Lee Sol is obviously that they're soap bubbles, and in the soap bubbles you can see reflections of all sorts of things, and the things that are reflected there are rocking horses and other beautiful things that people, especially children, love. So I want to end the screen sharing. Did I actually manage to? Looks like I haven't actually shared the screen. Let me try this again. Okay, so this is, can you see it now? Okay, so see, this is one of Liesel's paintings. And you can see the bubbles, the soap bubbles in the painting. Well, perhaps I'll leave the sharing of the screen to other people because I'd rather just talk about it. So anyway, they get into a bidding war with regard to this painting, and the way the art world is described in the way the art world is described in this show is that there is objective value to the art, and that the artists and the artists have their own problems, they have their own emotional problems, but the art is objectively beautiful. And when it comes to Lee Soul's paintings, I'm actually quite intrigued by them. They eventually turned into uh, sort of a puzzle. So there were 9 paintings, and they all went together. They fit together. And it turned out that this resolved into a solution to the life story of Ryan Gold, the child from Korea who was adopted. And it's kind of like the story of Mr. Sunshine, where Eugene Choi was adopted. He became an American, and as a child, he ran away. He had been a slave, and he boarded a ship, and he was taken to America, and he became an American. And then he returned to Korea, and surprisingly enough, he was able to speak Korean perfectly after all those years. In the same way, uh, our romantic hero, Ryan Gold, who is an artist who has somehow forgotten how to paint. And so he arrives in Korea and is given the position of director of the art museum. And uh, he is very interested in the works of Lee Soul, just like Xian, the hero of the idol that Dong-mi follows. So apparently, Lee Soul has 2 fans of her art who are very interested in purchasing the art. And through a series of events, all 9 pictures are found. And it turns out that the artist Lee Soul is the mother of Ryan Gold. And um, uh, he wasn't abandoned. And okay, we don't need to talk about all of that. It's the plot of the series, and it's a little bit of a soap opera. But I enjoyed watching the series because of the way that it handled both the art and what it means to be a fan. So, is everyone a fan of something? And do you just have to find that thing that you are going to be a fan of? Or are some people never going to be fans? Well, I have a theory about this. I think it has to do with limerence. Um, Limerence is the ability to get high on something that isn't a relationship. So extroverts are very into relationships. They need feedback. They need to talk to somebody. They get energized by being around other people. And they would never be just somebody who worships from afar. They sometimes like to be worshiped, but they themselves do not worship. Uh, On the other hand, uh, limerent people are usually introverts, and they are they are able to get energy from focusing on someone or something. So they either experience unrequited love rather than being in a relationship with someone, or they actually receive inspiration and are artists or writers, and they do this alone, and they don't need the adulation of others. They don't feed off other people's energy. They are not vampires. They are actually pretty self sufficient people. And so that's kind of an interesting question there, about fandom and art, and how fandom is related to art. Um, can you be an artist and be extroverted? Can you be an artist and actually derive your energy from others? Or is that a false kind of art? Um, I think I could probably show you those paintings by. So can you see that? These are the bubbles. Why is it that the fans do not need to have a relationship with Xi'an? How is their idolatry for him different from, say, a relationship? So, what happens, one of the plot points in the story is that uh, Ryan Gold invites Dongmi to come with him to Xi'an's apartment because he's negotiating with Xi'an about an exhibition of the art of the soul. And Dongmin goes into the apartment, and she's so overcome with awe that she is so close to her idol that she has to go to the bathroom there. And she touches the shower and gets wet. And Lee Gold has to give her a jacket to wear. Now, Xi'an actually knows about Dongmi's website. He knows about the photos that she's taken of him. He knows the stories about him that she writes on her website, and he's aware of her worship, but he doesn't know for sure that she is the road to Xi'an. Um, she derives great pleasure from being far back, far away, and just watching and just enjoying the sunshine of the gaze. Uh, but I think he enjoys being worshipped. And that's Xian is a very interesting character in the show. He's almost an innocent. He doesn't actually seem to have any relationships with anyone except his mother. Um, but he loves the fans, and he loves their adulation in a very, very innocent way. Um, so, is Ryan Gold really an artist? I'm not sure because when I look at Lee Soul's paintings, um, they look like something. Uh, a lot of people are now painting soap bubbles and reflections in soap bubbles, and it's a very common theme. And you might say that isn't high art. Uh, Whereas Ryan Gold paints people's faces with all sorts of splotches of color on them, and that is considered the latest trend in art. But Lee Soul is trying to say something, and it's not really clear that Ryan Gold has anything to say. Um, I really wish that I could share with you what the paintings look like. I could try again as an exercise. Okay, so here we have, I think, on the screen, uh, one of the pictures that Ryan Gold painted. And this is after he got over his difficulty with, after he became reconciled with his mother and he was able to paint again. And this is supposed to be a painting that he did of Dong-mi. So the question is, um, how how much of an art piece is that? Um, is this real art? What do the splotches of color add to the face? what are we supposed to get from that? What makes that art? Is he expressing himself, or is he just showing us what um, what is popular? Okay, I think that screen sharing succeeded a little bit more than the previous one, so bear with me as I try to do this. Julia usually does it. Um, but if we look at the art of Lee Soul, and I'm going to try to share that. Let's see if I can succeed in it. Um, okay. Anyway, the paintings by Lee Soul are much much more evocative, and they seem to be actually focused on their subject matter. So it's not really a question of whether something is representational or not representational. Um, it's just a question of what is the focus? Is the focus on the artwork, or is the focus on the artist? And I really think that that's the issue. Um, so I want to talk to you about um, autoists and why autoists are more likely to be focused on art ideas, and they are more likely to become fans of another person than to throw themselves into a relationship with another person. Um, so what happens with Dongmi in this story of her private life is that as she becomes involved with Ryan Gold and starts to have a real relationship, they first have to fake a relationship in order to appear to be um, involved with one another so that the fans of Xi'an will not be upset that maybe she's seeing Xi'an, their idol, um, because their feeling is that he should remain unattached and that they should be able to worship him from afar. Um, but as Dong-mi becomes involved with Ryan Gold, um, she becomes less of a fan. She spends less and less time doting on Xi'an. And instead of editing photos that she took of Xi'an, she she starts to edit photos that she took of Ryan Gold. Um, so does she become a fan of Ryan Gold? No, I don't think so. She's in a relationship with him and she knows that he has clay feet. And she expects him to give as good as he gets. And it's a two-sided thing. And the satisfaction from the relationship is not based on how perfect and wonderful and worthy of worship Ryan Gold is. It's based on how well they get along, really, how nice they are to each other. Um, she has a friend who is also a fan, but is married and has a child. Dongmi does, and her friend said that when she got involved with her husband, it was as if somehow the fandom turned on him, and but I don't really think so. I don't think so. I don't think that's how it works. I don't think that most people are in a mutual admiration society with the person that they're having a relationship with. I mean, that could work, uh, where you worship the other person and they worship you back. In fact, Ayn Rand kind of thought that that's what it should be like. Uh, but most relationships are not like that. People become nurturing of one another. They see faults and flaws, and at the same time, they're willing to help out and they're willing to do something that isn't fun for them so as to uh, give to the other person. And then they expect the other person to do something that they don't think is fun in order to nurture the relationship. Um, but that's not at all what fandom is. Uh, Fandom is one sided. So, in Our Lady of Kaifeng, Mara is an artist, she's a poet, she's a writer, and and she's in love with Mr. Sesame, and she worships Mr. Sesame, but she's not in a relationship with Mr. Sesame. And the question is, does Mr. Sesame know that all these people are worshiping him? Because she's not the only one. Mara is not the only person who worships Mr. Sesame. They're all the girls at the school where he teaches are in love with him, or have crushes on him. And there's Luna uh, and Bella and all of them. And when Mr. Sesame actually forms a relationship with one of the girls, he doesn't inform anyone about this. And as a result of that, he doesn't stop being an idol. And I think maybe that's an interesting point that we should make about that. If you are a fan of Dune, you know that Lord Leto was married, but he intentionally didn't actually marry the woman, Lady Jessica. He kept her as a concubine so that he would have this slot open for alliances. So the question is, um, did Mr. Sesame keep his relationship a secret, the better to be worshipped? Do people do that? Um, at the end of her private life, I felt a little bit sorry for Shion, um, because he noticed that his longtime fan who ran the website, The Road to Shion, was taking a hiatus from being his fan. And that was a little bit sad. The reason all of this is coming together for me right now is because I'm also looking into the narcissistic relationships that are being described by the likes of Dr. Ramani. And it seems as though the certain types of narcissists are actually people who are setting themselves up to be other people's idols. Um, and they discard people when those people stop worshiping them. So it's all quite interesting. There are many fandoms. In order to be a real artist, you do have to be able to focus on something other than a relationship. I don't think that everybody is capable of doing that. I think that most people go to work but are not in love with what they do. I think most people are married but are not in love with the other person. They love that person. They feel nurturing sympathy for them, but they're not worshiping that person. So it just might be that, obviously this is a wild dichotomy, but it just might be that the difference between an introvert and an extrovert, between a narcissist and a non narcissist, um, might be the ability to focus on something that is outside himself in order to worship a god or enjoy art or actually take fiction seriously and have that a major influence in your life. You have to think that relationships are secondary. You have to think, oh, yeah, okay, the government said this, but that's not the most important thing. My employer does this, but that's not the most important thing. Yeah, that guy likes me, but I don't care that he likes me. I care that I like this guy, the guy I can't have. Um, I think that's a very interesting topic, and we'll discuss it some more some other time. But I think right now I still have to practice my screen sharing ability so that I can share more with you in the future. So I am going to share with you again, if I can, um, my uh, this is my process, by the way. Faces change as I Okay. Goodbye, everybody. Good night.